All right, we're going to talk about the neuron now and break it down. First, you have a definition of a neuron. It's the nerve cell. It is the basic building block of the whole nervous system. Then, getting into the neuron itself, we have the dendrite and the axon. Right here, you can see these little branchy parts of the neuron are called dendrites, and they receive information from other neurons. And yes, they branch off into little tree-like branches, and they are all these little pieces right here are connected to other neurons. So one neuron can be connected to hundreds, thousands of other neurons. That's the dendrite. Then you have the axon, which is the longest branch of the neuron cell, and that's this right here. And at the end of this, you have the terminal branches of the axon right here, and they connect to the next neuron's dendrites. Okay, and so here you have the axon, terminal branches, and dendrites. And next. As well, you have the myelin sheath. Okay, the myelin sheath are these little fatty cells that cover all the axon. Okay, we need this fat. This is one reason why the idea that you don't need fat in your body is absolutely incorrect. You got to have this. It makes your nerves work faster and better. And if you don't have this, you have all kinds of issues like MS, where basically your body starts to fall apart at different times. It comes, it goes. There's different types of it. I don't want to get into everything, but it is not a disease that I would wish on anyone, and it's primarily due to the fact that you have problems with the myelin sheath in your neurons. Okay. Dendrites complete their job by passing the incoming message down the central part of the neuron called the soma. Okay. Here's the soma right here. Okay. The soma, or cell body, contains the cell's nucleus and life support machinery. Its function is to assess all messages the cell receives. So if it receives enough, I don't want to really get too much into it, receives enough information, it decides, here's the cell body, to send a message down the long tube of the axon to the next cell. So now we're going to talk about an action potential. An action potential is a neural impulse. That's all it is. It is what keeps us alive. It's a brief electrical charge. We're going to talk about electrical and chemical here. This is electrical. Okay? A brief electrical charge that travels down an axon generated by the movement of positively charged atoms in and out of the channels in the axon's membrane. We're not going to have to get too deep into the heavy-duty biology of this, but you just need to know that when a neuron fires, it has to do with ions, and hopefully you've learned a little bit about ions. And you're changing the polarity of the axon to create the electrical charge. That's about as deep as we're going to have to get. Don't panic. Okay, if you have questions, please ask in class. Okay, so an action potential is literally the neural impulse. Don't forget that. Okay, once the action potential is released, there is no going back. Okay, it is an all or nothing principle. You don't kind of fire an axon. It doesn't get bits and pieces of it fired, and that's what creates the intensity of a feeling or something. The example I always give is if I'm tickling my arm, ooh, tickly, 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 tickly. Okay, certain neurons are designed to detect very low levels of touch. Okay, and they'll fire. They're completely firing. They're not kind of firing. Okay, now when I slap myself, okay, there's a different set of neurons that are designed that only activate when there's enough pressure put on them to feel the slap. Okay, and then they send the signal to my brain. It's not the same neurons. It's different sets of neurons, we don't really have to get into all of that. It can be the same neurons depending on what we're doing, but in this case, for the most part, it's different neurons sending different signals to the brain. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. It's an all or nothing principle, and that's the reason I got the gun in the picture. You either fire a gun or you don't fire a gun. You can't kind of fire a gun. Okay? Let me take a break. All right, so now we're going to talk about what an axon does to fire. So it's at resting potential here. If you look on the slide, basically you can see over in this little diagram when I'm sorry, the word is when a neuron's at rest, okay, when a neuron is at rest, it has a negative polarity. That means there's more negative ions on the inside than on the outside. This is sort of a blow-up of what's going on, and we don't, like I said, don't worry about all the chemistry and biology here. What we really need to understand is that when the signal is given by the cell body, by the nucleus, that hey, it's time to send this signal on down the road, you have these gates that are right here, and these gates allow positive ions into the axon, which create an electrical charge, and basically it starts to send the signal down the entire axon, okay? And that's all you really need to know, and they're sodium ions, okay? Sodium ions, an electrical charge, and resting potential. Don't worry about exactly how many there needs to be and what the chemical formulas are. That does not apply to this class, okay? So, again, when it becomes excited, boo, the signal shoots down the axon. Now, each axon potential is followed by a brief recharging period known as the refractory period. So it's a chance to reset everything, get the neuron again to be resting or in a negative state inside the axon, okay? This happens thousands of times a second. So this is not something that is like, you couldn't like slap yourself and then quickly slap yourself again. You'll continue to feel those things, or you'll continue to use your neurons because it happens so fast we can't really wrap our brains around it as human beings in the sense of time lapse. But there is actually a refractory period which they've been able to determine using microscopes and stuff that you can't normally, things that would help us see into the body that we can't normally see. So let me go back here and show you how this would work. So here you have the cell body. It's going to receive information from another neuron. If enough neurons send enough information to the dendrites, the cell body, the nucleus, decides, man, we got enough, fire. So it sends a signal. It tells the rest of the body, hey, it's time to send an electrical signal all the way down the axon, and it goes, boo, just like that. Okay, everybody's got this sound inside their body. Boo, that's electricity. Okay, and then it gets to these the ends, the axon terminals, where you have these terminal branches, and now we're going to see what happens there. All right. Here you have the synapse, which is a junction between the axon tip of the sending neuron and the dendrite or cell body of the receiving neuron. Big thing here is, it looks, we can't see neurons, but if let's say you could, they're so close together that I guess you could say with the naked eye at first, it looks like they're touching. In reality, no neuron is actually touching another neuron. There's a little itty bitty tiny gap in between both neurons. This is called the synaptic gap, or some people, and it's just semantics, synaptic cleft, synaptic junction, it's all synapse, it's all the same thing, okay? Don't freak out about it, okay? Now, what goes on here is, all right, what's going on is that when enough of these these are called neurotransmitters, get released from the sending neuron into the synaptic gap, what they're doing is being soaked up. They're going to gates in the next neuron. If enough gates over here get filled in the next neuron, that's called reaching threshold. That's the signal that the nucleus uses to, hey, we've reached enough information here to tell us to send the signal on down the line, okay? So these gates have to be filled up with the sending neuron neurotransmitter. Okay, and I'll talk about neurotransmitters here in a second. And so that's threshold. You must reach threshold, okay, to have a neuron fire. Again, it either fires or it doesn't. So, neurotransmitters. What is a neurotransmitter? It is a chemical messenger that traverses or crosses the synaptic gap between neurons. It is a chemical messenger. Remember before I said it's going to go from electrical to chemical, and this is where we're starting to go to chemical. So we have an electrical signal going all the way down the axon to the axon tip right here, And once that electrical signal comes in, that signals to the terminal branch of the axon to release neurons. I'm sorry, to release neurotransmitters. I'm confusing you. Neurotransmitters. Okay? Now we go from electrical to chemical. This chemical messenger travels the synaptic gap and binds with the other neuron. Okay? So we're constantly going back and forth between chemical, electrical. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. And here you will see two neurons and how it basically looks. And another picture here of what it looks like. And I don't know why I put that guy on here. I just thought he was funny looking.